Hafa Day and welcome to My Story. I'm Kate Baltazar, your host, and we are today atop the beautiful Pacific Star Resort and Spa. Shortly, I will be joined by certified grief recovery specialists Darlene Garcia and Michelle Sasimoto to talk about a topic that many of us on Guam have experienced in our lives, grief, and the evidence-based program called the Grief Recovery Method to help us overcome our grief. Stay right there. There's more after this, when My Story continues. Welcome back to My Story. I'm Kate Baltazar, your host, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here with certified grief recovery specialists, Darlene Garcia and Michelle Sasimoto. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here today. So a lot of what we have been talking about around grief is centered around things that are usually not known about grief. And it takes a certain special moment or event or occurrence that might have happened in your life.
Right.
If you would please share, how did you get involved with grief recovery?
Well, for me, it was the loss of my husband. He died in a tragic motorcycle accident in 2015, and in fact, July 17 will be 4 years since he died. So, at the time that Frank died, I was very lost and scared, angry, just so many different human emotions, that you go through when you lose someone. And I didn't know how to deal with it. In fact, there was a lot of things that I thought I knew about grief, but when he died, none of it felt normal or felt right. And so I did many different things for myself to try and at least control the emotions because they were spinning out of control. And nothing helped me from, just trying to get inspired by family and friends and things on social media, our widow support group, hiring a psychologist, going to church, praying to God, like everything just didn't feel right, to help me through what I was going through.
Sure.
And then someone introduced me to the Grief Recovery Institute online. And when I looked them up, I could tell already from just reading what the method was about that it was different. And unfortunately, they didn't have it on Guam at the time. So I went off island and got certified. Not got certified, but did the personal work for myself. And in 2.5 days, I actually started to believe in hope again and saw a spark of light and believed that healing was on the horizon. And that was the first time that I felt that since he died. And then 6 months later, I decided I wanted to get certified because there was nothing like this on the island. And I really wanted to bring it to the people of Guam. We go to funerals all the time, right? So we experience death all the time. It's around us, right? Since we were younger. And just there's so much more about it, and we can talk about it later on. But
Darlene, while you're talking about that, about grief in general, could you give us a general idea about what grief is? And I think that there are some ideas about, and many people associate grief with death,
right?
And then there are certain colloquialisms that have become a part of our normal everyday life. And when people talk in hushed tones about grief, can you talk to us a little bit about grief in general?
Yeah. So to your point, most people associate grief with death, right? So the most common definition of grief is the normal natural reaction to loss. In the grief recovery method, we add loss of any kind. Right. So it could be anything. But again, it is, one of those significant events that usually bring people to a place of deep grief, which is the loss of a loved one. But there's so many other ones: divorce, moving, financial losses, retirement. Like I was grieving when I retired, from my corporate job. So there's many different facets of loss that people don't associate with grief. So I think that the key two words there is loss of any kind,
Of
right?
any kind.
Right. But the other one that we have at the grief recovery with our grief recovery method programs is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. It's a long definition, but when you think about it, everything that is familiar to you, right?
Mhm.
For example, when I lost Frank, my whole life dramatically changed in that moment. The familiarity of waking up to him in the morning, going to bed with him at night,
Mhm.
having coffee and
Sure.
watching CNN in the
Right.
morning, right? Before we get ready for work. All the familiar things no longer existed in my life. And those conflicting feelings, fear, anger,
Mhm.
right? Sadness,
Mhm.
confusion, disappointment. There's so many conflicting feelings, even joy, right? I had so much gratitude that Frank said, I love you. Like those were the last words, right? That he said to me before
Yes.
he left the house that day. I didn't know those were going to be his last words. But I have so much gratitude for that, right? I have so
Sure.
much joy that we shared a life together for almost 25 years,
Mhm.
And so those conflicting feelings really come into effect when someone is grieving, and we never really associate that with grief. So that's one of, I think, the biggest definitions, right, that we use, the grief recovery method, that help people to understand that they grieve so many different things in their life.
So when you're talking about that, about grieving in all those different things, those 40 plus human experiences that can cause grief,
Right.
normally people have a way that is not natural and not normal in how they try to recover from grief.
Right.
So there are myths surrounding this grief.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yes, there is. With the Grief Recovery Method program, we have identified 6
Mhm.
universal,
Right.
what we call misinformation or myths
Exactly.
around grief. Right. One of them is be strong. Right. That we all know that in our culture. Right. You
Sure.
have to be strong.
Put on a brave face.
Right.
Be
Right.
strong for your children, mom, dad.
Yes,
you
exactly.
know.
Be
Sure.
strong for everyone.
Everyone,
Yeah, ex-
except yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Replace the loss. That was
Replace
a big
the
one
loss.
for me, right?
Mhm.
It
For
was,
both of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, you're so young.
Yes.
You can go out and find another husband or a boyfriend. And I'm like, well, really? Like that at that moment, that didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
time heals. What about that one?
Time heals all
Right?
wounds.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine sitting there? I sat there thinking, okay, after a year, right, I'm going to wear black and I'm just going to wait. And after a year, hopefully
It'll
feel
all be better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Didn't feel better.
Don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Was-
Yeah.
Don't
was a
feel
hard
bad.
one.
Yeah.
He's in a better place.
He's in a better place.
Sure.
He's not suffering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I think with a lot of the misinformations is really people with well intentions.
Yeah.
But we just don't know what to do, what to say. And
Yeah.
I think through our journey with grief recovery, or mine, so to speak, and like Dar, we have very similar loss events.
Yeah.
My husband died 7 years ago.
Mhm.
This year, October 12th, will actually be 7 years that he passed away. And I think with everything that you talked about grief, mine was the conflicting feelings
Yeah.
again, because knowing what I knew with the myths, like being strong, and that was the famous thing that everybody told me. They were like, Michelle, my daughter was 11 when Reed passed away.
Mhm.
I had to learn how to be, be an unwife, as I call it. Learn what it meant to be
Yeah.
a widow. When someone first told me, oh my gosh, you're a widow, like that struck me with such offense, because in my whole life, I never thought that was going to be me at 37 years old.
Right.
Exactly.
Because my dreams, my hopes, and my expectations were to really live that fairy tale life, to
Mhm.
sit on the porch with my husband and grow
Grow
old
old.
with him while we watched our children
Right.
play and our grandchildren play.
like the Notebook, right?
Right. Exactly.
Well, Notebook is just, it's amazing. But, when we have all these things and being strong, I remember feeling so angry when people would tell me that.
Yeah.
You got to be strong for your daughter. And I'm like, oh, how do I be strong for my daughter when I don't even know how to be strong for myself
Right.
at the
Mhm.
moment?
Yeah.
And I remember the days where it was just pure darkness. And I tell this story all the time with me.
Mhm.
When my husband passed away, I know what it's like to be in a room filled with people who love me, who
Mhm.
care for me, who support me, but still felt like I was the only person.
Right.
left. And that
Wow.
was such an awful feeling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was despair, and it was desperation, so to speak.
Mhm.
And another thing was about keeping busy.
Keeping busy,
right?
for sure.
So what did I do? I kind of just like never stayed home, first of all. I kept busy all the time. I just fully engaged with my daughter, who was going into middle school at the time. So it's like my life became her life.
Mhm.
Everything that I did was for her, and I lost my sense of identity. That was
Sure.
another grief that I was
Absolutely.
dealing
Yeah.
with.
Mhm.
You know, replacing the loss. Oh boy, we were so good. And it's so funny because Darlene and I actually met because of a widow women support group.
Right.
Mhm.
That I was a widow, and one of her cousins was like, you know, sister, can you help my friend? Let's start this widow women support group, and you know, you guys have a lot of connections, and you can relate. And I remember Darlene coming in for the first time. There's about 5 of us, and she didn't want to say anything but her name and the story, the brief story she shared about Frank.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, we're getting somewhere, you know. And as we all started going, it didn't even dawn on me, because I was like, well, you know, my husband died 4 years ago,
Right.
and I have this new relationship. And yes, it was really sad and hard at the time, but I'm hopeful now, and I'm going through a healing journey.
Mhm.
And Darlene sat there, and she says it now, because
Yeah.
we always talk in grief recovery. It's when you're listening to someone, you know, you need to really like be humble,
present.
be
Yeah.
present, and have humility in that person or with
Sure.
yourself, that you're not going to analyze, criticize, or judge
Right.
another person. Because Darlene lost Frank, who was her soulmate husband. I lost Reed, who was my soulmate, my husband. Our loss experience were very similar, but our loss
yeah.
reaction
Was
And-
different.
journey was at 100%
Yeah.
individual. Very different.
Michelle, when we come back, I'd like for us to talk a little bit more about that, because I think we're really onto something here.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to My Story. I'm Kate Baltazar, your host, and joining me today are certified grief recovery specialist Darlene Garcia and Michelle Sasimoto. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Michelle, before the break, you were talking a little bit about grief and some coping. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, being in a room filled with people that loved me and supported me, but feeling alone. And I realized through the grief recovery that it all came from one of the biggest information that we were taught since childhood, which was to grieve alone. And many times it poses as a barrier. You know, when we were kids and we fall down, we get hurt and we cry. My parents, I don't remember it. I don't know if it was to toughen me up, but they would be like, dust yourself up, get back up, stop crying.
Uh-huh.
If you're gonna cry, go to your room. It's
Yes.
far from your heart, right?
Yeah.
I've been told to man up, and I'm a woman. So just some of those things have really planted that seed that when we go through a very hard, difficult time in our life, that shame comes with it, because I shouldn't tell people, you know, that I'm sad, that I'm crushed, that I'm devastated, and I should go to my room and just use that as a sanctuary, I guess, so to speak,
Yeah.
to figure things out, which I have no control.
Because it's
over.
weakness, right? To
Yeah.
grieve.
For sure.
Right.
That
And-
be strong.
And,
Yeah, be
and
strong.
grief is not something that you could just turn a light switch off and on, right? It's not a process. It's
Yeah.
ongoing. 7 years, and I hear a song, and I have grief attacks in my car, you know, at the traffic light, and people are probably looking at me like, oh my gosh, poor kid or poor girl. But grieving alone is the biggest myth and misperception, I guess, that people are told.
Yes.
And it is a prevention and a barrier for help-seeking behaviors.
Mhm.
And it just leads me to understand, you know, when we're talking about loss of health, loss of old self, loss of the strong, robust person I once was, and somebody gets diagnosed with cancer. I don't know what that feels like, but I do know that I have people that I love that have been stricken with cancer, and it has affected them to a point where they feel like their whole world has just completely shut down, and all of a sudden, everybody that was there that loved them, they can't reach out to
Mhm.
because of shame, because of, you know, maybe they might feel a sense of burden now.
Right.
Like, what am I going to do
Yeah.
about this? And they go into this hole by themselves,
Yeah.
and they don't realize that, you know, they don't have to carry that on their own.
Mhm.
That grieving alone is actually more detrimental
Yeah.
to
Sure.
the healing and recovery journey
Absolutely.
than to just say, okay, I'm going to figure this out on my own.
Mhm.
So, you know, there's a whole lot of things that we could talk for the whole segment just on that alone.
I know.
But Dar can relate, and part of grieving alone will prompt us to look for those temporary fixes, those bandages
Yeah.
that we just want to place over our holes in our hearts.
Many people do that. They
Yes.
try to self-medicate. They try
Right.
to cope
Yes.
in the ways that are not healthy for them, and
Right.
it will not help you recover from your grief. But
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So in our program, we actually identify that as STIRBs, which
Mhm.
stands for short-term energy relieving behaviors. And it really is about doing things to make you either forget, to numb, to suppress, to hide your pain or whatever human emotion that you're feeling, right?
Mhm.
We talk about, for example, food, right? We say comfort food. Why do we call it comfort food? Because it's supposed to make us feel better,
Yeah.
right? So, and we're taught that at such a young age, right?
Yes.
Michelle talked about that, about being a little girl. What about a little girl that had a hard time at school? It's okay, let's go. We're going to go get ice cream,
Mhm.
right? Or let's go get McDonald's.
Right.
We are teaching our kids that we're going to use food to eliminate or numb or mask that
the
pain.
pain.
And
Yes.
so as they're going through different types of human emotion or loss in their life,
Mhm.
that comes back to their conscious mind, right? There's other things, addictions, right?
Yes.
People don't just one day wake up and go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go and smoke cocaine and I want to be in it, someone that's going to be addicted, an addict, right? No, it doesn't happen that way. There's so much that they've gone through in their life that they're using this as a coping mechanism,
Mhm.
right? And then it ends up being something that even is far worse and more
Yes.
destructive, right, in their own life. But there's so many other different STIRBs. My biggest one was retail therapy.
Oh yes.
I can't even tell you how much
many
money
times
that I spent. And us women, right, we say that all
Yeah.
the time. Retail therapy, why? Because we're stressed, because we had a hard time at work, because our families are driving us crazy.
and it
That's-
temporarily makes us feel fantastic.
Right, and it is,
know?
and that's what we call it short term, right?
Right.
There's short term energy relieving behaviors. But one of the things that is so amazing about this method that we teach is that we help people to understand what that is so that they can identify that in their own lives. And when they're going through something that is a conflicting feeling because of a change in their life or a loss, then they'll know. It's okay to stirb. There's nothing wrong with stirbing as long as you can identify that that's what that is and that you don't allow it to become an addiction or long-term that's going to affect you, right?
To fix it permanently.
Right.
And
Health
you know,
conditions, right? You talked about cancer.
We did, and so John James, who is the founder of the Grief Recovery Institute,
Mhm.
one of his famous quotes is, "We are taught at an early age to acquire the things, right? To
Mhm.
acquire things, but we are not taught what to do when we lose these things."
Right.
I mean, we know how
That is
to
profound.
study for
Yeah.
SATs,
Yeah.
to get into college.
Yeah.
We know how to get that next car, that next job promotion, a
Sure.
child, to get married, to do all these wonderful, beautiful things
Yeah.
in life that are expectations. But when that's taken away, we are in this stuck zone. It's like, what do we do? And the grief recovery method, as Darlene has mentioned, does exactly that.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
teaches you that it is something that you do go through, but these are some tools that's going to
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
help you get through that. And it's almost, we talk about it all the time, Dar, with painting the room, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
with the
with the wrong
with
tools,
the wrong tools.
and replacing it with correct tools.
Yeah.
Because if we were to use screwdrivers and hammers and nails to paint this room, we are not going to get the job done unless it's to create a.
And that's what stirbs are.
Exactly. That's
Stirbs are the wrong tools
Exactly.
to overcome your
Yeah.
grief. So paint the room
Yes.
with the right
But
tools.
it's having that also to have some basic foundation to make the correct action choice.
Mhm.
Because we make choices every day. Stirbs are choices. We both
Yeah.
stirbed.
Yeah.
We have that in common as well, retail therapy. When Dar tells her story, I'm like, whoa, that is like so similar. But that's also the comfort in knowing that I'm not alone, right?
Yeah.
That other
Yes.
people go through this.
Absolutely.
And with painting the rooms, it also is important to know and identify what those incorrect tools were.
Yeah.
Because many times as human beings, we're creatures of habit and we want to gravitate back to those old tools.
Yes, for sure.
But we're gonna need those screwdrivers
Yeah.
one day, but just not to do this work.
to do this
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
project.
for something else.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So there are a lot of grievers out there, and I know certainly in my cross sections of my life and how I've met Michelle through this grad training long ago, and then Darlene. I know that I see grief differently now myself,
Right.
And when I look at everyone, and it's almost hard to be like, oh my gosh, griever, also grieving, you know, disturbing. Oh,
Yeah.
not going to do that, disturbing. And so when people see this, or when they hear about us, or when they hear about all the things that are happening in the community, and they finally make that decision, say, you know what, I need to try this.
Yeah.
I need to do something else.
Right.
Because I'm carrying around, it's like Amanda said, right?
Right.
And Dar always says, it's like boulders.
Yeah.
You're carrying around these boulders that just get heavier and heavier.
Yes.
If someone gives you a boulder, a little rock, you could probably carry it around for a long time, but all those things compounded over your life,
Right.
this compounded grief,
Yeah.
now
Becomes
you're
heavier and
carrying them all.
Right.
So when someone is at this point, and hopefully before they're at the point where the stirbs are destructive, how does the grief recovery help? Where can they go? What can they do? What is the grief recovery? What is the structure like, and what can they expect?
So the grief recovery method is an amazing method. First of all, I'm so passionate about it because it helped me, and you both know that, right? The transformation that I experienced from darkness to light.
Yes.
I always use pain to purpose, but it's structured and it has an end date, right? So we have 7 or 8 week programs, right? Depending on if it's a group or on one-on-one program, and it allows our grievers, because every human being is a griever on this planet, so we hope to, to see a lot of people come through our programs over a period of time. But, we give them that safe environment, non-judgmental environment. What do we say in grief recovery, right? Heart with ears.
Heart with ears,
right?
no mouth.
And so the structured program really is a way to teach people how to move through, to deal with those emotions that come from loss or conflicting feelings, change in a familiar pattern of behavior. And the exciting thing is that we started off as 4 in 2016, and now we have 19. So 14 on Guam and 5 in Saipan, which is also amazing because we are now stretching our arms to reach our island family and friends, and we want to go beyond Saipan as well. But right now, we've got a total of 19 grief recovery specialists in our region that can truly help every single person out here, because again, we're all grievers.
Yeah.
Right. And I just wanted to just plug the new workshop that we're launching as well, which is a 2-day weekend workshop. So anyone that maybe won't have the opportunity to do the long 7 or 8 week, I'm here to launch the 2-day weekend workshop.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and we can talk about details about that later on. But it's amazing that we have this tool now, which wasn't here when I came.
And the tools again, the correct tools could be used for any loss in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what sets us apart. People say, oh, so you're exempt from pain and from loss? Oh no.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
We had to do the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We had to do the heart work.
Yes, which is very hard.
To get certified.
Right.
And that, I think, scares people.
Yes.
Because there is a point where people are going to say, this is too hard. I don't want to dig that deep.
But it's hard to suppress those emotions too, right?
It's even harder to
suppress. So it's
suppress.
energy. You're using energy regardless if you're going to hold it in and do all the disturbing, or do the work to actually release and feel those emotions and figure out where that's coming from and why you feel that way.
And sometimes
right?
hanging on, this is my self-discovery. Sometimes hanging on to the pain feels like if I let go of the pain to feel joy again, I'm betraying.
Right.
I'm betraying
the
my
memory,
husband.
the experiences.
It's complete opposite.
It's not like that.
Yeah.
Grief recovery, and this is for all the grievers out there. It's not only for individuals who have been diagnosed with cancer, but it's for the caregivers, that have to take care of them, and what happens to their life too. It's a sudden change. It's like what Darlene talked about, the change in the familiar pattern, right, or behavior. It's also the children. It's also the spouses, the siblings, anybody that is in that household or even around in the community that's impacted.
We even have a special program for pet loss.
Right?
Pet loss.
Yes.
And
Pet loss.
helping children.
And
helping
children with grief.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so one other thing I wanted to just say is, John James again. We just love John James and Russell Coleman, the founders of this. They were grievers, by the way.
Right.
Grief Recovery Institute started because people had broken hearts.
Yep.
And they tried all these different things, right? And so we always talk about grief recovery not being the cure-all or the fix-all.
Yeah.
And grievers actually don't want to be fixed.
Yeah.
They basically just want to be
Heard.
heard, right?
Exactly.
And so John James would always say, it's never too soon to start your healing.
That's
You know,
right.
there's no time limit on it.
Yeah.
I always say the golden.
That's my favorite line.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm a Chamorro woman, and growing up, it was always like after the first death anniversary, that's when your life can start again.
Right. Don't buy a new car. Don't do anything
We were
until after the
rebels.
first year.
Darn, I remember we did that all before the first year, you know. But what happens is when we let the grief continue, it now manifests into unresolved grief that can really put so many barriers and fences
Yeah.
up for your future relationships.
Yeah.
And not even future relationships
Current.
with new people
Yeah.
or current,
Yeah.
but it's relationships with the people that you love.
Yeah.
Right?
Ladies, I could just be here all day because I can tell you the light that the grief recovery method has placed in me.
Right.
So I really just want to thank you, Darlene and Michelle, for joining us
Thank you
today,
so much.
Yes.
speaking about grief and the grief recovery method,
Right.
and where can they go for help if they want to reach out?
So right now we have a shared Facebook page. It's called Grief Recovery Guam and CNMI, and we also have that same page on Instagram. So people can find us on that page. All of our specialists are listed on there. Any events or workshops that we have coming up are also listed on those pages. So please follow us. If you're not following us yet, it's Grief Recovery Guam and CNMI on both Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank
It's our
you for
pleasure.
having us.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next month on My Story.